The original Star Wars is a movie loved by millions all around the world. But surprisingly, there are fascinating details about this film that even die-hard fans are still unaware of. So here is my list of 10 things you definitely didn't know about Star Wars. Number 10. Inspiration. It's well known that George Lucas was inspired by a range of influences in his creation of Star Wars, including Flash Gordon serials, westerns, the films of Akira Kurosawa, and battle sequences from World War II movies. What is less known is the influence of a now mostly forgotten 1950s radio serial called Spaceman Stone. In his third adventure, Spaceman Stone in the Kingdom of Kazos, Stone Calloway, his sidekick Zappy, and their trusty robot companion Buzzbox crash land on the planet Kazos, where Stone must rescue the beautiful Princess Aragon and help rebels fight the evil empire of Lord Varlock. Excerpts from the surviving audio reveal the uncanny influence this serial had on Star Wars.
Stone, look! There's the sacred mountain the Sand Dwellers are talking about.
That's no mountain. That's a man-made structure.
Man-made? Jeepers, how tall would it be?
Estimated height of structure is 2.7 miles.
2.7 miles? You gotta be kidding me, Buzzbox.
Kidding does not fall within my programming parameters.
But that's crazy. Who could build something that big?
I've got a bad feeling about this.
One can just picture a young George Lucas lying in bed listening to this broadcast and imagining adventures in a galaxy far, far away. Number 9. Casting. To give his project a sense of prestige, George Lucas was determined to cast a distinguished British actor in the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and originally approached Sir Laurence Olivier. But Olivier read the script and declined. In correspondence with his agent, discovered after his death, Olivier described the script as an incomprehensible mishmash of adolescent, pseudo-mystical nonsense. His acting rival, Alec Guinness, who took on the role and received a lucrative percentage of the film's earnings, used to send him photographs of the royalty checks he received each year, accompanied by the words, "Your loss, old chum." Number 8. The deleted torture scene. The scene where Darth Vader tries to get Princess Leia to reveal the location of the rebel base closes with the entry of an interrogation droid. But originally this scene went far longer, depicting in harrowing detail the torture that the droid inflicts upon the princess and her fierce determination not to give up any secrets. It said that Carrie Fisher was required to scream so much whilst filming this scene that she had lost her voice by the end of the day. This was all part of a much more violent cut of the film that George Lucas originally produced, influenced by the darker films of his director friends, Brian De Palma and Francis Ford Coppola. Surviving footage of battles between stormtroopers and rebels reveals how much bloodier they were originally. It was only when the studio pointed out to him that the merchandising opportunities would be vastly reduced if children were unable to see the film that Lucas relented and recut the film to produce the family-friendly version we know today. Number 7. Famous droids and aliens. Star Wars was a risky film to make in the mid-1970s, so 20th Century Fox was cautious in the amount of money they allocated for its production. Because of the limited budget, the Star Wars production team couldn't afford to create as many droids and aliens as George Lucas wanted. Therefore, it was decided to utilize robot props and alien costumes from other movies as a cost-saving measure. So in the sequence set aboard the Jawa Sandcrawler, they planned to feature Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet, the little drones from Silent Running, and even the robot from Lost in Space. And the Mos Eisley Cantina scene was expected to include aliens such as the Metaluna mutant from This Island Earth, the Martians from Invaders from Mars, and the Gorn from the Star Trek episode Arena. Though George Lucas thought these would be nice Easter eggs for science fiction fans, he was also concerned that they might be a bit distracting. So he was relieved when the production received more funding to enable the creation of new creatures and droids. In the end, the only evidence that these other characters were ever considered was the adaptation of the Silent Running drones into the Gonk droids. But where did this extra funding come from? Number 6. Product placement. In what might now seem a fairly commonplace practice, The Star Wars producers came up with the then fairly novel idea of allowing the involvement on screen of a number of big companies in exchange for the extra funding required to properly complete the movie. This didn't involve the appearance of actual products. Even George Lucas knew how incongruous it would be to feature a box of Wheaties on the Skywalker breakfast table. But it did involve subtly incorporating famous logos into some of the scenes in an almost subliminal way. For example, when Obi-Wan is disabling the tractor beam aboard the Death Star, eagle-eyed viewers would notice the Atari symbol amongst the controls. In Mos Eisley Spaceport, there are buildings featuring the Target logo and the McDonald's arches. And in the spacecraft hangar on Yavin 4, there is the familiar symbol for Shell Oil. Note that these logos have now been digitally erased from the newer versions of Star Wars. Number 5. Original composer. The music of Star Wars is undoubtedly part of what makes the film so great. But John Williams wasn't the director's first choice to compose the soundtrack. Initially, George Lucas assumed that a science fiction film would require a futuristic synthesizer soundtrack, and as he was working in London, he decided to approach one of the most famous synthesizer players of the era, Rick Wakeman. Wakeman was available, having left the progressive rock group Yes, and was intrigued by the assignment. He composed a piece of music to accompany a scene from Star Wars, to let the director decide if he was the man for the job. But Wakeman's decision not to use synthesizers this time meant the result was not what Lucas was expecting. Lucas felt the result wasn't quite what he was after, and decided to select a traditional orchestral composer instead. At the recommendation of his friend Steven Spielberg, he chose John Williams, and the rest is history. Number 4. Recalled action figures. Amongst the wave of merchandising that accompanied the release of Star Wars, some of the most popular items were the action figures produced by Kenner Toys. They created figures of all the main characters in the movie, which sold immensely well and were much loved by children all over the world. So determined were they to maximize the action figure potential that Kenner started making plans to produce figures for more obscure characters, like the little bat character getting a drink at the cantina bar, the Dianoga from the trash compactor, and the mouse droid from the Death Star. But their biggest misstep was the release of figures representing the burnt corpses of Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru following their death at the hands of the stormtroopers. They were in toy shops for a single day before being hurriedly recalled following outrage by parents and psychologists. These figurines are now valuable collector's items selling for huge sums on eBay. Number 3. International reception. When Star Wars was released internationally, its reception varied considerably within different countries. In peaceful Sweden, where violence in films was frowned upon, numerous scenes in the film were cut or modified, including the death of Luke's aunt and uncle, the strangling of the rebel soldier, the fight in the cantina, the killing of Greedo, the destruction of Alderaan, and many more. The result was a film that only ran 75 minutes and didn't make much sense, so it was little wonder it was a commercial flop amongst the Swedes. In Germany, where there was extreme sensitivity over their wartime history, they were offended by the film's parallels with the Nazis. This included referring to the Empire's soldiers as stormtroopers, the military outfits modelled on that of Nazi officers, the award ceremony that echoes the assembly at Hitler's Nuremberg rally, and many other similarities. This resulted in the film being withheld from German cinemas for over a year, and only released thanks to a vigorous diplomatic effort by the Jimmy Carter administration. In Japan, the people adored the fact that George Lucas had incorporated so much of their culture into his film. This included the acknowledged debt he owed to the films of Akira Kurosawa, the lightsaber duel being based on Japanese sword fighting, the resemblance of the sword-wielding Jedi to samurai, and Darth Vader's costume design being modelled on Japanese warlords. When Lucas visited Japan on a promotional tour, he was given the keys to the city of Tokyo and provided with a bevy of geisha girls to accompany him as he travelled across the country, which proved to be a major source of conflict with his wife, Marsha, once he returned back to the States. Number 2. That One Australian Guy. Star Wars was released in an era when Australia didn't have a major presence in Hollywood, years before the appearance of Mel Gibson, Russell Crowe, Nicole Kidman, and so many others. So the fact that one Aussie actor, Peter Sumner, appeared in the film, even if it was for less than 20 seconds, was considered so noteworthy that he was given equal billing on the Australian posters alongside the other stars of the film. After his passing in 2016, numerous fans signed a petition requesting the Australian government hold a national day of mourning and provide the late actor with a state funeral, but they were unsuccessful. Number 1. The legacy of Star Wars. The impact of Star Wars in our world has been profound. It inspired the religion of Jediism, which is now the 4th largest religion in the world after Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. Working lightsabers are now a reality, thanks to the dedicated work of scientists and engineers. Unfortunately, these have resulted in numerous injuries and are now restricted to those over 17 years of age. And in nature, birds the world over now regularly reproduce the amazing sounds of this film. So there you have it, a host of amazing things you definitely didn't know about this beloved film. See you next time.